Miranda Barbour. On November 11, 2013, Pennsylvania witnessed a tragedy that would expose the dark side of online connections and young relationships. Miranda Barbour, 19 years old, and her husband lled, 22, had been married for only 3 weeks when they decided to celebrate their anniversary in the most twisted way imaginable. They posted an advertisement on Craigslist offering companionship, luring a stranger into what would become his final hours. What could drive newlyweds to commit such an act together as a bonding experience? The couple met 42-year-old Troy LaFerrara in a mall parking lot in Hummel's Wharf, where he believed he was meeting someone for companionship he had paid $100 for. Miranda picked him up in her car while lled hid in the back seat, waiting for the right moment. They drove to Sunbury, where their plan unfolded. lled emerged from his hiding place with a cord, strangling LaFerrara while Miranda repeatedly used a weapon she had brought, inflicting more than 20 wounds. The attack was sustained and brutal, showing clear premeditation. After ending LaFerrara's life, the couple took disturbing steps to cover their tracks. They dumped his remains in an alley, then cleaned their car with bleach to remove evidence. Rather than showing any remorse or shock at what they had done, they went to a local establishment to celebrate, treating the act as an accomplishment rather than a tragedy. This would later become crucial in understanding their mindset and lack of empathy. Born in 1994, Miranda had experienced trauma during her childhood in Wasilla, Alaska, including being harmed by a relative at age 4. Her mother later testified about this trauma, and the perpetrator was convicted, confirming the incident occurred. These early experiences may have contributed to her psychological development, though they certainly didn't excuse her later actions. By the time she met lled, she had developed concerning patterns of thinking. The investigation moved quickly when police traced LaFerrara's last phone call to Miranda's number. Initially, both Miranda and lled denied any involvement, but as evidence mounted, they shifted to confessing. According to lled's affidavit, their motive was simply to take someone's life together as a way of bonding in their new marriage. This chilling admission revealed the calculated nature of their act, showing it wasn't impulsive, but rather planned as a shared experience. Originally charged with first-degree offenses that carried potential for the harshest penalties, both Miranda and lled ultimately pleaded guilty to second-degree charges in 2014. On September 18th, they were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in Northumberland County Court. District Attorney Ann Targonsky called the case extremely heinous, emphasizing the predatory nature of their actions and complete lack of justification. The case took an even more disturbing turn when Miranda claimed in a 2014 interview that she had taken at least 22 lives since age 13 as part of what she described as involvement with a group holding extreme beliefs. She stated she felt it was time to share this information and didn't care if people believed her. The claims included references to a shooting in Alaska and various other incidents across multiple states. However, extensive investigations by the FBI and Alaska state troopers found absolutely no evidence to support any of these assertions, deeming them completely unsubstantiated. As of 2025, Miranda remains incarcerated at SCI Muncie in Pennsylvania. Her claims of additional cases sparked media attention but led nowhere in terms of additional charges. She has filed legal action against representatives claiming mishandling of her situation, though details remain limited. From a couple's twisted bonding, the next case would involve jealousy taken to its deadliest extreme. Tony Fratto. On March 3, 2011, the desert landscape between Nevada and Utah became the burial ground for a teenager whose only crime was being part of a romantic triangle. Toni Collette Fratto, 19 years old, and her boyfriend, Cody Cree Patton, also 19. Kidnapped Michaela Costanzo from her usual route after track practice. Mickey, as friends called her, was a good student and athlete with dreams of becoming an author, completely unaware of the danger she was walking into. How does teenage jealousy escalate to such irreversible and calculated actions? The couple drove Mickey to a remote location in the desert, where they carried out their plan. Cody struck her with a shovel, while Toni sat on her legs, preventing any chance of escape. Then, in an act that showed complete disregard for human life, her throat was cut. Toni later admitted to investigators that she had participated in striking Mickey as well. After ending her life, they buried her in a shallow grave, burned her possessions to destroy evidence, and attempted to clean themselves by swimming before stopping at a fast food restaurant to eat. The motive, according to prosecutors, stemmed from jealousy that had been building in Toni's mind. Mickey, who was Cody's ex-girlfriend, had sent him text messages about potentially reuniting, which threatened the relationship Toni had with him. Toni and Cody had been baptized as Mormons in January 2011, planning a temple wedding, and Toni couldn't accept any challenge to her engagement. Diaries found later revealed Toni's obsessive thoughts about both Mickey and Cody, showing how the jealousy had consumed her thinking. Cody was arrested days after Mickey's disappearance, when he confessed to investigators. Toni, who initially wasn't suspected, confessed on April 22, 2011, to Cody's attorneys, claiming guilt had overwhelmed her. This led to her arrest on May 5th. Interestingly, no forensic evidence actually linked Toni to the scene, raising questions about whether her confession was entirely accurate or if she was influenced by other factors, including potential mistreatment by Cody. The investigation revealed troubling dynamics in Toni and Cody's relationship. Evidence suggested Cody had been physically aggressive with Toni, including an incident where he choked her while recording it. This raised questions during legal proceedings about how much of her involvement was her own choice versus being coerced or manipulated by her boyfriend. However, her own diaries and statements suggested she had been a willing participant, motivated by her own jealousy and obsession. Toni pleaded guilty to second-degree charges in January 2012, avoiding the potential for a death penalty trial. She agreed to testify against Cody, who subsequently pleaded guilty to first-degree charges in May 2012. On April 16, 2012, Judge Daniel Pappas sentenced Toni to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole after 18 years, plus additional time for weapon-related enhancements, meaning she would serve a minimum of 8 years before any parole consideration on those charges. At her sentencing, Toni stated she knew what she did was wrong and expressed apology for her actions against Michaela. Mickey's mother, Celia, spoke about the devastating loss, saying there was a part of her that had been ripped away forever. Cody received life without the possibility of parole, reflecting the court's view of his greater culpability in planning and executing the attack. Toni's first parole hearing took place in 2021, but was denied. Her next opportunity came in 2024. As of 2025, she remains incarcerated at Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Nevada, where she continues serving her sentence. While jealousy motivated the previous case, the next would involve family dynamics turned deadly. Tess Dam. On February 28, 2007, Lafayette, Colorado police made a grim discovery in the trunk of a vehicle. Linda Dam, 52 years old, had been missing for nearly a month, and an anonymous tip had finally led investigators to her remains. The person responsible for her disappearance and the subsequent cover-up was her own daughter, Tess Dam, who was 15 years old at the time, along with Tess's boyfriend Brian Grove, 17. How does a mother-daughter relationship deteriorate to the point of such irreversible betrayal? The attack on Linda had occurred in February 27, when Brian inflicted multiple wounds to her neck after receiving approval from Tess to proceed. The act took place in the family home, a place where Linda should have felt safe. After ending her life, Tess and Brian faced the problem of what to do with her remains. They hid her body in the trunk of Linda's own car, attempting various disposal methods over the following weeks, including trying to access a landfill and a cemetery, but were unsuccessful each time. The cover-up involved not just Tess and Brian, but also two friends who helped them maintain the deception. Jared Smith, 16, and Jared Guy, 18, assisted in hiding the truth from authorities. For nearly a month, the group managed to keep Linda's location secret until the anonymous tip reached police on February 28th, leading to the discovery that would unravel their entire scheme. Tess claimed that Linda had been mistreating her and that her mother was struggling with alcohol dependence. She stated Linda had threatened to force Brian to leave their home, which Tess couldn't accept. Neighbors reported that police had been called to the Dam residence frequently for disputes, suggesting there had been ongoing family tensions. However, the severity of Tess's response far exceeded any justification based on family conflict. Both Tess and Brian were held without bail and prosecuted as adults, given the serious nature of their offenses. Tess pleaded guilty to second-degree charges in 28, accepting responsibility for her role in her mother's passing and the subsequent cover-up. Brian also pleaded guilty to second-degree charges and was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with parole eligibility in 2033. Tess received a sentence of 23 years, with the first 5 to be served in a juvenile facility before being transferred to adult custody. This split sentence reflected both the seriousness of her offense and recognition of her age at the time. The sentencing acknowledged she was still developing mentally and emotionally when she made these catastrophic decisions, while also ensuring significant consequences for taking her mother's life. During her incarceration, Tess wrote about her transformation, stating in 2018 that the person she had become was drastically different from who she was at 15. She participated in educational programs and therapy designed to help her understand the gravity of her actions and develop healthier ways of managing conflict and emotions. After serving more than 10 years, Tess was granted parole in April 2019. As of 2025, Tess's current whereabouts and activities are not public knowledge, as is typical for parolees trying to rebuild their lives away from public scrutiny. From family betrayal, the next case would cross continents to Argentina in a relationship gone fatally wrong. Nahir Galarza. On December 29, 2017, Gualeguaychú, Argentina was shaken by a case that would become one of the nation's most debated legal matters in recent memory. Nahir Galarza, 19 years old, was involved in the passing of her boyfriend, Fernando Pastorizo, 20 years old, in the early morning hours. What made this case particularly controversial was the conflicting narratives about what happened and why, as well as Nahir's shifting explanations for her actions. What truly happened that December morning? And was it an accident or something more calculated? Fernando was found with 2 gunshot wounds near a street in Gualeguaychú, a discovery that immediately launched an investigation. The weapon used belonged to Nahir's father, who was a police officer, raising questions about how she had accessed it. Initial reports and Nahir's first statements suggested the incident might have been accidental, but as investigators dug deeper, evidence began painting a different picture of what transpired that morning. Born on September 19, 1998, Nahir came from a middle-class family and was a law student at the time of the incident. She and Fernando had been in an on-and-off relationship characterized by intensity and frequent conflicts. Friends and family members would later describe the relationship as volatile, with both parties displaying possessive and jealous behaviors toward each other. The dynamic between them had been deteriorating in the weeks leading up to Fernando's passing. During the investigation, forensic analysis revealed crucial details about the gunshot wounds. The first shot had a 50% chance of being accidental, based on the angle and distance. But the second shot was fired from approximately 50 centimeters away, suggesting deliberate action rather than an accident. This evidence contradicted Nahir's initial claims that the entire incident had been unintentional, forcing her to revise her explanations multiple times. In interviews with investigators and later with media, Nahir's story evolved. At one point, she told a classmate that she had done it because Fernando was never going to leave her in peace, suggesting premeditation based on ongoing relationship tensions. However, during trial proceedings, she maintained that she hadn't intended the outcome and that circumstances had spiraled beyond her control. The shifting narratives damaged her credibility with the court and public. The trial took place in 2018 and garnered massive media attention throughout Argentina. On July 3, 2018, Nahir was convicted of aggravated intentional harm due to the relationship context. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 35 years before parole eligibility, making her the first woman in Argentina to receive such a sentence. The verdict was controversial, with some arguing her age and gender led to harsher treatment, while others maintained the evidence supported the sentence. Appeals were filed in 2019 and 2020, but were rejected by higher courts. A documentary released on Prime Video in 2024 explored the case from multiple angles, featuring interviews with Nahir, her parents, friends, and Fernando's family members. Each side presented their perspective on the relationship and the events of that December morning, though no new evidence emerged to change the legal outcome. As of 2025, Nahir remains at Unidad Penal No. 6 in Paraná, Argentina, where she is studying psychology. In 2022, her defense team made new accusations suggesting her father might have been involved, but these were rejected by courts and led to a restraining order. Fernando's family continues to maintain that justice was served, while Nahir's supporters argue she deserves a sentence reduction based on her age and circumstances. While Argentina debated one case, across the Atlantic, another young woman's actions would shock the UK. Princess Owusu Ansah. On February 2, 2023, East Dulwich in London witnessed an attack that was as brazen as it was disturbing. Princess Owusu Ansah, 18 years old from Royston, entered the home of someone she considered a friend and committed acts that would be broadcast live on social media for viewers to witness in real time. The incident stemmed from an argument over romantic interests, showing how quickly teenage conflicts can escalate when emotions override judgment. How does a friendship deteriorate to the point where such extreme actions seem justified? Princess arrived at her friend's residence in East Dulwich and immediately began her attack. She struck her friend multiple times before escalating to using boiling water, causing serious harm. The assault continued with a weapon that caused injuries to the leg. Throughout this ordeal, Princess was live streaming on Snapchat, allowing others to witness what was happening. She also destroyed property in the room, adding charges of criminal damage to the assault. The motive appeared to center on jealousy over a boyfriend, a conflict that had apparently been brewing between the two young women. Public viewers of the live stream alerted authorities, who responded quickly to the address. Princess was arrested on February 5th, just 3 days after the attack. The fact that she had broadcast her actions suggested either a complete disconnect from the seriousness of what she was doing, or a desire for attention that overrode any concern about legal consequences. Forensic examination confirmed the injuries sustained by the individual, though thankfully they were not life-threatening. The combination of physical strikes, scalding water, and weapon wounds required medical treatment, but the person survived. The live streaming aspect added a modern dimension to the case, showing how social media has changed the landscape of criminal behavior, with some perpetrators seemingly viewing their actions as content to be shared rather than serious offenses. During legal proceedings, Princess pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent and criminal damage. These charges reflected both the severity of the physical harm she caused and the property destruction that occurred during the attack. The guilty plea meant she accepted responsibility for her actions, avoiding a trial where the live stream footage would have been presented as evidence. In March 2023, Princess was sentenced to 3 years in prison for her offenses. The sentence took into account her age, her guilty plea, and the nature of the attack. The judge emphasized the seriousness of the premeditated nature of her actions and the fact that she had chosen to broadcast them publicly, suggesting a disturbing lack of understanding about the gravity of causing such harm to another person. As of 2025, Princess has likely been released or is nearing the end of her sentence, given the 3-year term imposed in 2023. Her current whereabouts and activities are not public information, which is typical for young offenders who have served their time and are attempting to reintegrate into society. From a live-streamed attack, the next case would involve family members and a level of brutality that shocked investigators. Cassandra Bjorga. In April 2017, Gwinnett County, Georgia became the site of a family tragedy that revealed the darkest aspects of intergenerational conflict. Cassandra Bjorga, known as Cassie, was 17 years old and had been living with her grandparents after her mother, Amanda Sterling, had relinquished custody about 1.5 years earlier due to behavioral challenges that had become unmanageable at home. What happened that April would devastate the family and shock the community? Could warning signs have prevented this tragedy from unfolding in such a horrific manner? Cassie and her boyfriend, Johnny Ryder, carried out a planned attack on her grandparents, Randall and Wendy, in their own home. The assault was brutal and sustained, involving multiple methods. After ending their lives, the couple attempted to cover their tracks by using bleach to destroy evidence and using caulk to seal doors, showing a level of planning that suggested premeditation rather than a spontaneous act of rage. What made their behavior even more disturbing was what came next. Rather than showing any remorse or panic about what they had done, Cassie and Johnny spent the following days partying, as if the loss of life meant nothing to them. This behavior suggested a profound lack of empathy and an inability to grasp the gravity of their actions. The apparent enjoyment they took in their freedom following the attack would later become a key factor in how authorities and the court viewed their characters and capacity for rehabilitation. The case came to light when an assault on Johnny's sister led to deeper investigation, which eventually connected them to the grandparents' disappearance and subsequent discovery of their remains. Police records revealed that there had been 31 calls to the grandparents' home in the time leading up to the tragedy, indicating ongoing conflicts and tensions that had been building for months, if not longer. Cassie's mother, Amanda, spoke to media, stating that nothing could have prepared her for what her daughter had done. She described the behavioral issues that had led to Cassie living with her grandparents, but emphasized that she never imagined it would escalate to such violence. Another family member, granddaughter Sylvia, expressed that her heart remained broken by the loss and the betrayal. Johnny was described by relatives as having committed an abominable act. Both Cassie and Johnny faced charges, including multiple counts related to the grandparents' passing and aggravated assault. Forensic evidence showed the victims had sustained blunt force trauma, along with other injuries that indicated a prolonged attack rather than a quick confrontation. The forensic findings supported prosecutors' arguments that this was a planned and executed scheme rather than a situation that got out of hand. In February 2018, both Cassie and Johnny pleaded guilty to avoid trial, accepting responsibility for their actions. Were each sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 60 years. This means neither will be eligible for parole consideration until they are well into their 70s, essentially ensuring they will spend the majority of their lives behind bars. The lengthy minimum reflects both the heinous nature of their crimes and their complete lack of remorse. As of 2025, both Cassie and Johnny remain incarcerated in Georgia facilities. There have been no significant updates to their cases, and given the length of their minimum terms, neither will face parole boards for decades. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. From a family betrayal that shocked Georgia, the next case would involve a group of friends and a drug deal gone tragically wrong. Christine Paulilla. On July 18, 2003, Clear Lake, Texas witnessed a tragedy that would remain unsolved for 3 years and devastate multiple families. 4 teenagers were found deceased in a home, victims of a shooting that appeared connected to substance dealings. The perpetrator was someone the individuals had considered a friend. Christine Marie Paulilla, 17 at the time, who had committed the acts alongside her boyfriend, Christopher Snyder. What made the case even more heartbreaking was that these were people Christine knew well and had socialized with regularly. How does someone turn on friends they once trusted and cared about? Born on March 31, 1986, Christine had experienced significant challenges throughout her childhood. Her father passed away when she was just 2 years old in an accident, and her mother struggled with substance issues that temporarily resulted in loss of custody before recovery. Christine developed a condition causing hair loss from kindergarten, leading to severe harassment from peers and deeply affecting her self-esteem. She wore wigs and glasses, feeling like an outsider despite eventually finding acceptance. The family moved to Clear Lake, Texas, where Christine befriended the individuals who would later become her targets. She was even voted Miss Irresistible in 2003 at her school, suggesting she had found social acceptance. However, her life took a dark turn when she began a relationship with Christopher Snyder, who was older and introduced her to substances. The relationship was reportedly marked by controlling and harmful behavior from Snyder, fundamentally changing Christine's trajectory. On that July day, Christine and Christopher went to the home of her friends during what was reportedly connected to a substance transaction. What happened next shocked investigators. The 4 teenagers were shot more than 40 times total, with some also being struck with the weapon. The scene was described as extremely disturbing, with evidence of significant harm inflicted. One of the individuals asked, "Why?" before passing, a question that haunted investigators and families for years. The case remained unsolved for 3 years, with investigators following numerous leads that went nowhere. The breakthrough came in July 2006, when an anonymous tip from someone in a recovery facility pointed authorities toward Christine. By this time, Christopher Snyder had taken his own life, leaving Christine as the sole person to face charges. She was arrested on July 19, 2006, nearly 3 years to the day after the incident occurred. During the investigation, forensic evidence showed multiple gunshot wounds on each person, with some injuries inflicted in sensitive areas, suggesting either extreme rage or a desire to ensure no survivors. The scene had remarkably little physical evidence despite the brutality, indicating some level of planning or awareness about forensics. Christine's mother would later speak about her daughter being Miss Irresistible, struggling to reconcile that image with what her daughter had become. Christine's trial took place in October 2008, where she was convicted of capital charges related to all 4 deaths. Rather than receiving the harshest possible penalty, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 40 years. This means she won't be eligible for parole consideration until 2046, when she will be 60 years old. The sentence reflected both the severity of her crimes and considerations about her age and circumstances. During her incarceration, Christine married and later divorced Justin Rott. As of 2025, she remains at the Christina Melton Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas. From a group tragedy in Texas, the next case would take us to England and a confrontation fueled by substances. Jordan Jobson. In 2007, Wallsend, England experienced a case that highlighted the deadly combination of substance use and teenage impulsivity. Jordan Jobson, 15 years old at the time, was under the influence of both alcohol and cocaine when she encountered Samantha Magin, also in her teens. What began as an argument quickly escalated into something far more serious, ending with Samantha's life being taken in a manner that shocked the community and law enforcement. What happens when teenage conflict meets impaired judgment and access to weapons? The confrontation between Jordan and Samantha involved a weapon from a kitchen, resulting in 43 separate wounds being inflicted. 10 of these were deep and serious, with one proving fatal by reaching Samantha's heart. The sustained nature of the attack suggested extreme rage or complete loss of control, with Jordan continuing long past any point of self-defense. The forensic evidence painted a picture of a brutal and prolonged assault that left no chance for the individual to survive. Details about Jordan's childhood and background are limited in public records. What is known is that she had been consuming vodka and cocaine on the day of the incident, substances that would have significantly impaired her judgment and impulse control. The combination of alcohol and stimulants can create a particularly volatile mental state, especially in someone whose brain is still developing. This doesn't excuse her actions, but provides context for how the situation escalated so catastrophically. Following the attack, Jordan was arrested and charged with serious offenses. The forensic evidence was overwhelming, with the kitchen knife used in the attack and the 43 wounds on Samantha's body, providing clear proof of what had occurred. During the investigation, the depth and number of wounds became key factors in understanding the severity and nature of the assault. Samantha's family was devastated by their loss. Her mother, Allison, described Jordan as a ticking time bomb, suggesting there had been warning signs about her dangerous potential that hadn't been adequately addressed. Her sister Carly later expressed frustration that after 15 years, they felt they had received nothing in terms of justice or closure. The family's pain was compounded by feeling that the sentence didn't adequately reflect the severity of taking Samantha's life. Jordan was convicted in 2008 and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years. However, this minimum was later reduced to 11 years, a decision that upset Samantha's family, who felt the reduction minimized the seriousness of the crime. The reduced term meant Jordan would be eligible for parole much sooner than originally anticipated, though her path to release would prove complicated. Jordan was first denied parole in 2018 after making threats while incarcerated, showing she still struggled with anger management and impulse control. However, she was eventually released in 2022 after serving her minimum term. The release was controversial, with Samantha's family expressing concern about public safety. Jordan was subject to recall to prison in 2021. but was released again, reportedly now living near Samantha's family, which has caused additional distress. As of 2025, Jordan is living in the community under supervision. Samantha's family has campaigned against knife crime and been awarded MBEs for their advocacy work, turning their grief into efforts to prevent similar tragedies. While substances played a role in Jordan's case, the next would involve severe mental health challenges. Isabella Guzman. On August 28, 2013, Aurora, Colorado, witnessed a family tragedy that would later be attributed to severe mental illness. Isabella Guzman, 18 years old, attacked her mother Yunmi Hoy in their home, inflicting 79 separate wounds. The brutality of the attack shocked investigators, but what would later emerge was evidence of significant psychological disturbance that had gone largely untreated until it culminated in this tragic outcome. When does mental illness cross the line from needing treatment to requiring institutional commitment? Born on June 9, 1995, Isabella's parents Robert Guzman and Yunmi Hoy had divorced when she was 3 years old. The family practiced a particular faith tradition, which Isabella left at age 14. Following this departure, Isabella later claimed that her relationship with her mother had deteriorated, with allegations of worsening treatment emerging in legal proceedings. However, the extent and nature of any family dysfunction remained disputed throughout the case. Mental health experts who evaluated Isabella diagnosed her with schizophrenia, a serious condition characterized by delusions, hallucinations, and impaired thinking. According to evaluations, Isabella had been experiencing delusions where she believed her mother was actually someone named Cecilia, and that by ending this person's life, she would somehow save the world. She reported experiencing hallucinations and voices that commanded her actions, indicating a complete break from reality at the time of the incident. The attack itself involved 79 separate wounds inflicted on Yunmi's face, neck, and torso. Investigators found a note that read, "You will pay," suggesting some level of planning or premeditation, though mental health experts argued this could have been written during a delusional state. The forensic evidence was overwhelming, but the question became whether Isabella understood right from wrong at the time of her actions. Rather than facing a traditional criminal trial, Isabella's case was resolved through a finding of not guilty by reason of insanity in 2014. This meant she was found to have committed the acts, but was not criminally responsible due to her mental state. Instead of prison, she was committed to the Colorado Mental Health Institute at Pueblo, where she would receive psychiatric treatment indefinitely until deemed safe for release. In a 2020 interview with CBS 4, Isabella stated she was not herself during the attack and believed she was ready to return to society. She also made allegations about experiencing mistreatment at the hospital facility, though these claims were investigated separately. Her case sparked debates about the balance between public safety and the rights of individuals with mental illness, particularly those who have committed serious acts while in a psychotic state. In 2023, Isabella requested full release from the facility, arguing she had been stabilized through medication and therapy. The court allowed her to participate in limited community activities under supervision, while her request for full release was considered. This incremental approach reflected efforts to balance her treatment progress with public safety concerns and the severity of what occurred. As of 2025, Isabella remains at the Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo while continuing to pursue full release. She has been allowed increasing levels of community access, suggesting progress in her treatment. The ACLU has been involved in aspects of her case, advocating for appropriate treatment and conditions. Her situation continues to raise important questions about mental illness criminal responsibility, and how society should handle individuals who commit serious acts while psychotic. From mental illness in Colorado, the next case would take us to Las Vegas and a robbery attempt gone wrong. Emma Cusack. On June 29, 2023, Las Vegas witnessed a tragedy at the Luxor Hotel on the Strip. Emma Cusack, 17 years old at the time, though 18 when formally processed, met Charlie Satrustige, 36, through a dating application. What Charlie believed would be a social encounter turned into an attempted robbery that ended with him losing his life. The case highlighted the dangers of online connections and the desperation that can drive young people to make catastrophic decisions. What leads a teenager to see robbery as a solution? And how quickly can such situations turn deadly? Details about Emma's childhood and background are limited in public records. What is known is that at the time of the incident, she reportedly had no stable housing and was in a desperate situation. This desperation appears to have driven her decision to use a dating platform, not for genuine connection, but as a means to identify someone who might be carrying valuables worth stealing. The premeditation involved in this approach would later become relevant during her legal proceedings. The encounter at the Luxor Hotel began as planned, but quickly turned violent. During the attempted robbery, Emma used a weapon, shooting Charlie. The exact sequence of events and what provoked the use of lethal force remained somewhat unclear, but the outcome was certain. Charlie was killed, and Emma fled the scene. She took items and Charlie's vehicle, leaving behind a crime scene that would quickly lead investigators to identify her. Law enforcement moved swiftly, and Emma was located and taken into custody. When she surrendered, she reportedly stated she didn't mean to take his life, suggesting the shooting may not have been her intended outcome when she planned the robbery. However, this statement did little to mitigate her legal situation, as she had brought a weapon to what was meant to be a robbery, making her responsible for any resulting harm under the law. Forensic evidence confirmed the shooting and linked Emma to the scene. The stolen items and vehicle were recovered, providing additional proof of her actions. The investigation revealed the dating app connection, showing how she had deliberately targeted Charlie through the platform. This evidence of planning meant prosecutors could pursue serious charges despite Emma's age and her claims that she hadn't intended the most serious outcome. Rather than face trial, Emma pleaded guilty to second-degree charges in 2024, accepting responsibility for her role in Charlie's passing. In September 2024, she was sentenced to between 11 and 27.5 years in prison, with parole eligibility in 2033 after serving the minimum term. The sentence reflected both the seriousness of taking a life during a robbery and considerations about her age, an apparent lack of intent for the most severe outcome. As of 2025, Emma is incarcerated in a Nevada facility. There have been no significant updates to her case since sentencing. From a robbery in Nevada, the next case would involve multiple incidents in Georgia. Leslie Garcia Juarez. In December 2020, Gwinnett County, Georgia saw a connection between two separate shooting incidents that had occurred nearly a year apart. Leslie Garcia Juarez, 16 years old when charged, was linked to both cases. The shooting of Osiel Montano on December 30th, 2019, and the shooting of Adaf Amable on December 29th, 2020. The revelation that these cases were connected shocked investigators and the community. What connects these two incidents? And what drove such repeated actions? Details about Leslie's background and childhood are notably absent from public records. The investigation that connected her to both cases came together when authorities began examining patterns and evidence from the two separate incidents. The fact that both occurred in late December of consecutive years suggested either a disturbing pattern or a coincidence that investigators couldn't ignore. The forensic evidence confirmed shootings had occurred in both cases. The two individuals who lost their lives were Osiel Montano and Adaf Amable, though details about their connections to Leslie or potential motives remain limited in public reporting. Following her arrest for the second incident in 2020, investigators connected forensic evidence linking Leslie to the earlier case from 2019. This led to her being charged in both incidents, facing serious consequences for actions committed over the span of a year. The lack of public information about these cases makes it difficult to understand the full context or what might have motivated the actions. Unlike many high-profile cases involving teenage perpetrators, Leslie's case hasn't received extensive media coverage, and many details remain sealed or unreported. This could be due to her age at the time of the offenses or ongoing legal proceedings that limit what can be publicly disclosed. After being arrested, Leslie was charged as an adult given the severity of the allegations and the fact that multiple lives had been lost. She was initially held at the Gainesville Regional Youth Detention Center following her 2020 arrest before proceedings moved forward. The decision to charge her as an adult reflected prosecutors' assessment that the charges warranted adult court jurisdiction. The case status, as of the most recent available information, indicates that proceedings were pending. Unlike many of the other cases examined, Leslie's situation appears to either still be working through the court system or information about resolution has not been made publicly available. As of 2025, her current status and whereabouts are unclear, with no recent updates in public records or media reports. From unclear circumstances in Georgia, the final case would involve accusations, denials, and a highly controversial conviction. Courtney Schulhoff. On February 9, 2004, Altamonte Springs, Florida, became the site of a family tragedy that would generate intense debate about parental relationships and justice for young defendants. Courtney Christine Schulhoff, 16 years old at the time, was charged with orchestrating the death of her father with help from her boyfriend, Paul Morin. The case would involve allegations of mistreatment, claims of self-defense, and eventually admissions that contradicted initial defenses. What truly happened in that household? And whose version of events was accurate? Born on December 27, 1987, Courtney had grown up in a household with divorced parents, living primarily with her father. She attended Lyman High School, but eventually dropped out to pursue a GED instead. She became involved with Paul Morin, an older boyfriend of whom her father disapproved. This disapproval would become central to the case, with Courtney later claiming her father had been regularly physically aggressive with her, though these allegations were never substantiated during trial proceedings. On that February evening, Paul attacked Courtney's father with a baseball bat while Courtney was present. The attack was brutal and sustained, resulting in fatal injuries. Forensic evidence showed the wounds were consistent with repeated strikes from the bat. During the initial investigation and trial, Courtney maintained she had not been the primary actor, but had orchestrated or encouraged the attack due to her father's alleged mistreatment. The prosecution argued that regardless of any family dysfunction, Courtney had planned her father's demise and manipulated her boyfriend into carrying it out. They presented evidence suggesting premeditation and coordination between Courtney and Paul. The defense attempted to introduce evidence of alleged mistreatment to explain Courtney's actions, but the court found insufficient substantiation for these claims to justify or significantly mitigate what had occurred. Courtney was tried and convicted of first-degree charges in 2006, initially receiving a life sentence. However, her case took an unexpected turn years after conviction. In post-sentencing statements and media appearances, including interviews in 2009 for RTL, 2011 for Snapped, and 2015 for Facing Evil, Courtney made a startling admission. She stated she had been the actual perpetrator, rather than just the orchestrator, contradicting her trial testimony and defense strategy. This post-conviction revelation that she claimed sole responsibility complicated the case's legacy. Questions arose about why she would admit to greater culpability after conviction, with some suggesting it was genuine remorse, while others wondered if it was attention-seeking behavior. Regardless of the motivation, her admission meant she had testified falsely during her trial, adding another layer of complexity to an already controversial case. Following legal challenges related to juvenile sentencing laws, Courtney was resentenced in 2017 to 40 years imprisonment rather than her original life sentence. This reduction reflected evolving legal standards regarding how juveniles should be sentenced, even for serious offenses. The new sentence meant she would have opportunities for earlier release than under her original life term, though she would still serve significant time. As of 2025, Courtney remains at Lowell Correctional Institution in Florida. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.